I mean, I think you've got three choices when something really negative in your life happens, and you have to have the right support network around you to help you make the right decision. But ultimately, it comes down to you. So I think you can either take what you've gotten and go back to where you were. Some people just revert into kind of like a computer. You go back to revisionary mode. You just go back to where you were and try and just replicate what happened, the person you were before that event happened. I think number two, candidly, you can use it as an excuse and you can use it as a crutch to lean on and say, well, that's why I got into things I shouldn't have. Or you can use it as fuel, and you can use it to kind of make yourself better and improve and find a way to get around it.
Altitude.
Tower, Delaware expected is release you, runway 4 left, wind 040 at 5, clear for takeoff.
Seats high, altimeter 0 eyes, we're clear for takeoff, clear for the airspace. Fire projector. My program curve was at 354. Line set.
Viper 01, be advised, the restricted area 6002 is still active.
Lights on.
Next picture, 16, 15,000, I'll give you some of that.
Viper 1 targeted.
This is the one thing that no one ever sees, the behind the scenes with all the technical pieces. But the good news is I record like in 3 different spots. So it looks like we just had another recording reset and start kicking again. So
No,
I'm jealous, man. That'll be a fun day. Hopefully the weather holds out. You know, I'm over in Georgia, still the Southeast. It seems like everything is thunderstorms and rain showers, you know, this time of year. So hopefully the weather cooperates.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, so with that, let's talk a little bit about you. So will you give everyone kind of the 60 to 90 second elevator pitch of who you are and what you do, and then we'll jump back to kind of where it all began.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, look, I live in Arlington, Virginia. I do a lot of mergers and acquisitions work, and I moonlight for the United States Air Force Heritage Flight Foundation, which is a huge honor for me to be a part of. My dad took me to air shows as a little kid. He was a mechanic in the Air Guard. It just never burned out. And I finally got my official license when I was 30 years old, but I soloed when I was 16. We just couldn't afford to pay the bills to between 16 and 30. So got into flying just, I think, like everyone else, and Cessnas and Cubs and everything, and just started working my way up. Got into a North American T-6 Texan, the mighty Texan, the terrible Texan. Very humbling to fly that airplane. And I put about 600 hours on that. And then I was able to acquire a P-51 Mustang in 2013. And then in 2017 was put on the Heritage Flight Program. So this will be my 5th or 6th season as a civilian getting to fly with the U.S. Air Force. So huge honor, glad to be here.
There's a lot to unpack in that because there's obviously a few years in between that. I would like to kind of peel back the onion and jump back to the beginning. So you said you soloed when you were 16. So obviously you had the aviation bug in you early.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my mom took flying lessons and never finished. My dad took flying lessons and never finished. And I think there was always a part of aviation where we would do family picnics at the Brandywine Airport. And, you know, I would get to see Ed Shipley and Jim Beasley flying around and tearing up the skies in their, you know, T6s and Mustangs. And they were kind of like local heroes to me. Some kids were into baseball, and for me, it was about going to air shows and watching the warbirds. So it just never burned out.
Did you, like, what was kind of the first steps to getting you flying? And then you said you had to stop kind of after you soloed there. Can you talk about that time period?
Yeah, I mean, it was really a tumultuous time for our family. My mom was incredibly sick. She ended up committing suicide when I was in much later in life. And on several of the attempts, you know, my dad and I would bridge the difficulty in growing up with all of that through aviation. That became our way to communicate with one another. So, you know, we would oftentimes go out to the airport and use that as a respite to talk about cool things and airplanes, you know, not hiding the fact that mom was really sick, but just necessarily having something that was more positive to rally around. So
I can't even imagine being in those shoes, especially as a teenager dealing with those things. But I know people have to do that. Is there any advice or was it going there and just like focusing on something different that kind of got you through? Because I think that qualifies as one of those, you know, type events that can put you down a path of no return, doing bad things or going down the wrong path, the proverbial fork in the road. But obviously you went a different path and are very successful, overcoming a lot of difficulty in the teenage years, which again, formative years. And when things don't go right, it takes a lot to make sure that you don't veer off the course there. What can you talk a little bit about that? And
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got three choices when something really negative in your life happens, and you have to have the right support network around you to help you make the right decision. But ultimately, it comes down to you. So I think you can either take what you've gotten and go back to where you were. Some people just revert into kind of like a computer. You go back to revisionary mode. You just go back to where you were and try and just replicate what happened, the person you were before that event happened. I think number two, candidly, you can use it as an excuse and you can use it as a crutch to lean on and say, well, that's why I got into things I shouldn't have. Or you can use it as fuel, and you can use it to kind of make yourself better and improve and find a way to get around it. And I think there are just thousands and thousands of examples of other people, that I think have been through worse. I think every bad experience is relative in your life. But for me, I just used it as fuel. I wanted to find the passion and take the energy and the love that I had from my mom and my dad. And I was like, hey, I'm going to go fix this. I'm going to go do better. I'm not going to just accept the status quo. So, that airplane that I rode in, the T-6, after my mom made the attempt on her life and my dad took me to the Brandywine airport, I got to meet Ed Shipley for the first time. Right. And now I own that T-6 and it's called Pamela Marie. Right. It's the world's most expensive T-6, right? Because it's, instead of going to a graveyard, I get to honor her through the way I wanted to. And when I found that airplane almost 15 years later, when Jimmy and Ed discovered it, we bought it and I restored it. And that was my therapy, right? That was my way of finding a way to get over it and deal with it in the way I wanted to, not in the way like everyone's like, oh, well, you got to deal with a problem this way. So I think you have to unpack for yourself kind of that negative circumstance, and you got to make a conscious decision. Am I going down? Am I going back to where I was, or am I going to try and solve the problem? And the one thing I've really learned over it, the most important thing, you got to pay every bill that comes your way. You're going to pay it sooner rather than later. So hiding from it, you can run from it, you can bury it, but man, you're going to pay the bill. So you got to find your own way to pay it. And for me, it was through aviation and the love of my mom and the restoring of the T-6 that I rode in when she was still alive. And then just kind of putting that all together to tell, my story. So anyway, sorry for the rant.
No, it's perfect. I mean, some salient points in there. And then the beauty of that, right, is obviously you took, those tumultuous times, you became successful, and then, again, able to honor your mom in the way that best suits you, right? Which through a passion of aviation is pretty incredible, I think. And for those listening, there's an article out there that I read, after knowing Andrew, but I didn't know this story behind you. And to me, it was very powerful just reading that and learning a little bit more about you, right? A side that I didn't know. Yeah. And I think that people can find, because everyone goes through something. There's always something that goes sideways in your life, but taking those points that you just laid out there, right? You got three choices as far as how you're going to handle it, I think is important as you go out there and face and do life.
Yeah.
So with that, 16 to 30, right? There was a little hiatus from aviation.
Yeah.
What was going on there?
It wasn't in the cards. It was hard, right? It was, like we couldn't afford it. There was a lot going on at home. I was trying to figure out just to finish high school was really challenging for me. Getting into college was difficult. Just everything was really hard, and flying was more of like a luxury, right? Yeah. It wasn't something that we could afford as a family, and it wasn't something I had time to do or knew how to, I didn't have anybody there. I had it was just really difficult. So I think college for me and where I went to Lynchburg College, this small liberal arts school in Lynchburg, Virginia. And I got in there and finally got away from a little bit of the chaos, and I just excelled. So every year that I was in school, I just got better and better and better. I had a coach there named Steve Kadelka, who I played lacrosse for, who was very transformational for me in my life. I still owe him, heaps and loads, as they would say over in the UK. He just did so much for me. He took me from being a boy to a man and told me, hey, this is how you need to conduct yourself. And I'll just never be able to repay it. But by the time I left, I had a real passion and said, hey, what are the things that I said I was going to do that I haven't done? And so the flying bug was just always there. I mean, I thought about flying every day.
Yeah.
You know, airplane flew overhead. I was staring at it. I would go to the airport and watch. And then I think when I turned 30, it was just like, all right, I've got the time and I have the money now. I've got to get this done. It was kind of like a
Yeah.
burning, desire to just get it done, do it.
I love it. And then, I mean, I know a lot's happening, very busy life, but you start progressing with, getting your pilot's license, instrument rating, and then quickly jumping into warbirds and racking up time in warbirds. Can you talk to me a little bit about the acquisition of the T-6, restoring that, and then the process of getting the Mustang and what that was like?
Yeah, I mean, the flying was always there, right? So it was just like everyone else. It was a Cessna 172 or, equivalent, and then into a Turbo 182 for the instrument rating after the private. And I bought a Cessna 400. It's now the
Yeah.
TTX. I think they just stopped making that. But I bought one of those, and that was my first real airplane. That was right around the time that Ed and Jimmy discovered that the T6 I rode in when I was 9 years old was now up for sale. So that was right around 2008, and they called me and they were like, "Hey, you gotta come up here to Chester County, and we got to do this deal." And it really is about Jim Beasley. It just shows what he would never admit this, but he's a sweetheart. He's a great guy, and he really stepped up. And Ed was there, and he convinced me to buy it. I mean, I did no business owning a T6. I don't have a mechanic. I don't know anything about warbirds. I'm in my very early 30s. This is
Right.
2008. And I'm like, what am I doing? And I realized that this was the way I could, restore that airplane and get it back to its original luster when I rode in it and when Ed actually owned it. And that started to create this progression. It was difficult and hard, and I had to learn how to fly it. And then I wanted to get into aerobatics, and I wanted to do it safely. And that was Jimmy and Ed, and other guys like Dan Calderall and others who were like, "Hey, you can do this." So I think that was kind of the progression from 2008 to 2013. Was just being a solid warbird pilot in the T6, and then in 2012 or so, I was shopping for a P-51. I had the financial resources from working really hard to be able to swing it. And I was really excited about getting it. And it's kind of the next step,
Yeah.
I think every airplane when it grows up wants to be a P-51. So
Right.
anyway, that was kind of the next step.
Obviously, having the resources to go out there and do that is one thing, right? Not a lot of people can find themselves in it, but the parallels I hear and draw from this is having a mission and an objective and going after it. Like, these are long-term objectives and goals that you're marching towards that take multiple steps and multiple years, as well as lots of pieces of the puzzle all being put together at the right time and right place in order to make it happen. It's not just something that gets handed to you.
Yeah.
Can you talk to a little bit about like what that drive is, or like how you focus in and hone in on these objectives and kind of what pushes your daily pattern? Because again, I do think there's a parallel here for success in no matter what field you're going after.
Yeah, I think you have to ask yourself what kind of life you want to have and what you want out of it. You only get to go around this dial once, right? You get on the merry-go-round, you get to do a full 360, and then it's over. So I think I think at a young age, just watching all of the bad news and the trauma and just so much, everything was just so difficult that everything else now feels slightly easier. I'm like, oh, all I need to do is like put this deal together. And people are like, you can't do that. And I'm like, well, that's not harder than what I've already dealt with. So why can't I? So I think just not accepting the status quo. I think people get too caught up in overthinking a lot of things and they make it harder than it needs to be. I think there's a lot of that. But I would say the number one thing is passion, is really having a really deep passion and interest in the things you want to do and the person that you want to be. And I think if you take that passion and you focus it towards what you want, you're going to get there. You're going to get further than you
Right.
think. I would say that's in business, and I think in my flying. I mean, I'd be lying to you if I told you when I got the Mustang. I mean, part of the reason I was like, I want to be on the Heritage Flight. Like that to
Yep.
me was the pinnacle and the pyramid at the very top that I wanted to go do. And I was like, I'll do whatever it takes, to the, within reason, I may think maybe things got a little weird at the end, I was like,
You never know what's going to happen.
hey, we better let this guy on the team before he does something crazy, I was pretty fired up about it. To me, it was a really big deal, and it still is. It still
Yeah.
is. So,
Well, at the end, I'll have to ask what's next, because I know there's something next brewing. But I think this would be a good time to transition to where we first met. So, 2017, I was the new F-16 demo pilot. For those who don't know, before the season starts, everyone gets together in Tucson, Arizona for the Air Force Heritage Flight Conference. And that's where the demo pilots and the heritage pilots get together. We fly a bunch of different formations together, from P-51, F-16, F-22, F-86, mixed up. It's by far the best TDY in the military. But I would say it's a busy time. It's the busiest 4 days of any TDY that I've ever been on. You were brand new that year. I was brand new that year. I'll say I didn't really, no idea, right? We met each other and that was it. But fast forward a few months and it's our first air show together, which is Sun and Fun. That's a little air show down in Florida.
that's right.
But the lead up to this is I'm getting several emails about Lee Lauterbach, who was once a Heritage Flight. He was a founding member in the Heritage Flight Foundation, but retired once he was over the age of 65. Andrew is working to get Lee one more Heritage flight for Stallion 51's anniversary. So there's a lot of email traffic back and forth in Standard Air Force. There's got to be a syllabus. You got to get this guy requalified. How are you going to get this guy requalified? So we hatched this plan together of rejoining down in the Avon Park airspace down in Florida. I'm going to do it coming in from another air show, and we're going to get Lee recertified. And I think initially the pitch was just one flight and done. Somehow we managed to get 4 flights out of that one flight and done. But, so I'm coming from Corpus Christi, Texas. I'm at 45,000 feet. And you and Lee are holding down in the MOA. And I have to descend through all the airspace, which is kind of busy there in Florida. But from 45,000 feet, sunny day, I catch the glint off your Mustang and we do the rejoin and go in there. And that was the beginning of the first air show of many. But that was, to me, that's one standout moments. And we got a few that we can talk about. But that Sun and Fun was your first air show as a Heritage pilot, correct?
It is, and just to memorialize that, I've got a great picture that a litho that you and I think Baby Rock sent over to me up on my wall still today. That was my very first Heritage flight where we rejoined, and well, I have a picture of our single, after Lee did the 1 day thing. But yeah, that was really special stuff. I mean, to honor Lee for all he's done for the program and being a founder and giving him his due that he deserves. He's just coming off of doing all the production work for Top Gun 2. And, he's just an icon in the aviation space, especially with the Mustang. He's like the Pope, of the P-51, right?
Right.
But yeah, you just never, those first few weeks and those first few air shows were candidly terrifying, right? Because you're I don't want to screw this up. I don't want to be the guy that makes a mistake.
Right.
It was really comforting to know that you have real fighter pilot experience. You're a tactical fighter pilot, and before you joined the Loops to Music crowd like the rest of us,
right.
for your last 2 years. But doing that with Lee and you was awesome for sure.
That was a standout memory, but also I think I'll let you tell the story from your perspective, then I'll jump in here because it was the next year. This is the one that there's video out there on Instagram. It looks like I'm having a seizure in the cockpit. I wish we had a GoPro on you, but doing the Belmont Stakes flyover, that was by far probably the most stressful flyover I think I've done. That might land in that category. I don't know for you.
Yeah, I would say that was the most complicated, messed up, but had the greatest outcome because no one knew the dumpster fire that was going on in our cockpits while that was going on. But I'll set the table real quickly. We were doing the Quonset, Rhode Island, I think it was Quonset, Rhode Island Air Show, and we decided to tack on, and thank you, U.S. Air Force, for including a last-minute addition to do the flyover to start the Belmont horse race, which is the end of the last of the Triple Crown, I think, right? So we get organized, and we're in the most complicated airspace, or some of the most complicated airspace in the country, right? Just north of JFK. And we hatch a plan over 4 days, and thanks to you, Rain, and your PowerPoint skills, but convincing the Air Force we could do this. So it's an F-16 and F-35 with a P-51 in the lead. And we have 3 or 4 solid days to like brief up and get all the right counterparties. Not that briefing it is necessarily hard, but getting all of the right jurisdictional authorities signed off, and the FAA and the A3 and COMAC and everybody to give the, this good housekeeping seal of approval. So anyway, everything goes great until we get to the hold. And my memory is, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but 3 days of planning, an F-16 and an F-35 and a P-51 came down to hand signals in the cockpit. So we couldn't communicate. We were 2.5 miles or 3-4 miles north of the launch point. I didn't know when to come off the hold, and I'm leading. And we ended up getting down to hand signals on how fast I should fly to maintain the timing, the TOT. So it was a complete mess. That's my recollection.
Well, and these are all make-believe hand signals, by the way, too. Like,
Correct.
It was just like, pull it back a little bit, just a little bit, like, no, push it up just a little bit. Meanwhile, like Dojo's in the F-35, like the most advanced modern fighter that man can make, just hanging out there.
With
not
no
a
comms,
peep.
nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah.
The piece of that, too, is that made it really difficult, from what I remember, is the fact we were holding so far north of the Belmont Stakes before we could, start our run in, because the airspace was so congested. Because normally they want to hold like 8-ish miles away, and then you can still make a correction, right, if you need to. But I think we were like 25 or 30 miles out, like before, like to hold to start the push and the run in. So like once we went, which again, we didn't know when we could go because we couldn't talk to anyone. It was just going on hope and a prayer. Like the ship sailed.
Yeah, not only could we
That's
not
it.
talk to anyone, but we couldn't talk to one another, is my recollection.
Right.
And then but you had everything loaded up on your FMS, and you were able to know what our TOT was. So you were able basically to communicate to me, like, we need to go faster and slower depending on, because we were so far out. You're right.
And again, just, with make-believe, just give me a little bit, like push it up a lot. I'll have to, as part of this episode, I'm going to have to reshare that video because it's quite comical that, again, we come down to, the most advanced fighter in the world, an F-16, and then an F-35. I'll let you decide. And a Mustang with, advanced avionics, and none of us can't talk to the ground party, can't talk to one another. Although we did wrap that one up pretty well. I do remember cruising back low level along the coast. That was pretty nice.
I think we shacked the timing too. I think that's the key, right? Everyone was like, you were spot on, and you don't want to be early for the national anthem, and you don't want to be super late. You want to be like right on it. And I think we shacked it. And then, heading back to Quonset, I mean, that's not to get into experiences, but to have an F-35 and an F-16 on your wing, and you're a civilian landscaper's kid, right? And you're in a P-51, and it was a beautiful, I recall, it was just absolutely beautiful as we were rolling back out of the airspace. And I'm like, well, why don't we just go down to 200 feet and give everyone on the beach a little, how you doing? Hello. And fistful of America,
Freedom.
And, we just cruised all the way down. We weren't down low for, the whole trip, but I think we went down to 200 feet out over the water. And I think a lot of people were like, whoa, that is cool. Yeah.
Well, it's cool about that formation too. There is good video because they had like the news helicopter that had really good high def video of us running in. But that, to me, that really speaks to heritage, right? Like from the beginning to what we have now, World War II to the most advanced fighter, the F-35, and the fact that we can go out there and do that formation all flying together, right? Because F-16 definitely doesn't like going slow. The Mustang go pretty quick, right? But again, it's different. And we're doing all that, which I think we kind of we skimmed the surface on this fact that JFK is right there. I think we're like a mile from the approach in of whatever that north-south runway is. So there's a lot of things that are going on here. But that was a pretty America day, if you ask me.
Yeah, I remember having a cocktail that night with you guys and thinking, this is all right. I can get used to this, and I think shuttling your crew around, that was a really fun weekend.
Yeah.
That was a really fun weekend. Well, and thanks to you too, Rain. I mean, look, you helped rewrite the rules for the first time, right? In 20 years of the history of the Heritage program, you help add new procedures and make it even more special than it was before you got on the team. So, I mean, no kidding around, talk about guys leaving things better than they found them. That's really epitomizes you and what you've done for the program when you were on it. I mean, you were high impact player, team player. I mean, everyone knew you were always there and solid. And then not only that, you just kind of went above and beyond to go through the, sorry to be direct, but the ass pain of dealing with all of the various pieces to try and convince the Air Force and Heritage and the FAA to add these new, more dynamic maneuvers to honor the history of these aircraft. So it's no kidding around. Thanks for you doing that.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. It was fun to do. I'm glad I got to fly it a couple times, which was, we added 2 passes, right?
That's
that
right.
got added in, which is pretty cool. I think there's a lot of hesitation, especially at Tucson with the airspace doing the turnaround. I do remember doing that turnaround out in front of the crowd in the F-86, which I think like Steve took us up to like 14,000 feet, like top of the TFR, do this whiffer deal. But the Heritage flight by far to me was the best part of doing that demo. Like there's like hands down, because I will say, you know, you got a Mustang, you're a Mustang pilot, which is the most badass thing, because like for me, that's the plane that I watched as a kid growing up, that you like, you know that motor, you know that noise. But my first flight, it was with Dan, he was leading it. And you would think that an F-16 wearing, you know, double ear pro, the helmet in a cockpit, that's a jet, you know, that you're not going to hear anything, but no kidding, on the wing of the Mustang, you can hear that Merlin motor in the cockpit of a Viper.
Yeah.
Which to me is just like, so the chills like that right now, it brings it back too. Like that's pretty incredible.
Yeah. It's that Merlin magic never gets old, you know, and you have that Rolls-Royce Merlin rolling around. I'm reminded when you and I were in Atlanta doing the Atlanta Motor Speedway, and we're like, it was like 2,000-foot ceiling over, and we were like right on the line. Like, are we doing this? Are we not doing this?
Yeah.
And I launch, and like as soon as you join up with me, you're like, hey, one of your panels is coming off, and I'm like,
That's right.
what panel? You know, it ended up being, and I can show your audience if those are watching, but you know, there's a little battery panel, but you know, the wing locker panels are probably the scariest, and that's what you don't want to come off. And so anyway.
Yeah. So here's what I learned in that. I mean, I always know words matter. But this is one of those things, like when we landed, you're like, hey dude, I was getting ready to get out of the plane. You know, like that's like the first spring, like depending on what panel that is, I was like, oh, well, in my mind, I'm like, that's just an open door on a jet that's going to get ripped off. You know, like if you tell me I open, I'm like, well, not my problem.
Yeah.
But you know, different planes have different things, different characteristics you're concerned about. But I do remember that. And then afterwards, like, yeah, you're like, hey, this is what this panel is. Not a big deal. These panels, big deal.
Yeah.
So there's some, have you had any like motor issues? I mean, again, coming from a single engine world, I was always thinking like, this thing's going to quit. This thing's going to quit. I'm always looking for the next piece of concrete or where I can put the plane down. Have you had any motor issues or anything kind of crazy?
Yeah. I mean,
happen?
I've had a couple things that have been a little touch and go. I've had a T-6 engine that had a glazed cylinder on the R1340, you know, a 9-cylinder engine. And we replaced my old engine with a new one. And that was a little sporty, had a real rumble. And, you know, I've had a couple little episodes in the Mustang where the engine's just not running right. And chip light came on, and in a procedure where my engine was actually making metal, which is really bad, and had to kind of deal with that. Kind of funny now to talk about, but not funny at the time. Just at this past Heritage flight, I had a coolant leak issue that we thought we had resolved. And just to talk to you about communication, we had a 4-ship. So we had 2 P-51s, we had a F-22, and we had an F-16 in a 4-ship out at Heritage. And we had all, you know, the radios were terrible. We're in the 4-ship, and all I heard was, Mustang, you're leaking coolant, right? So immediately,
Words matter.
I am like, I'm out of here. You know, I break out, and it ended up being we absolutely followed the right procedure. But just to your point, you have to be really careful about what you say. It would have been better if they were like, BA, your coolant door, you're leaking coolant, not, you know, you're leaking coolant, you know? So it was one of those things. But the words you use, especially on a comm and a dissimilar formation with people who have military background and civilian, and by the way, that's why we do Heritage, right? We find out where those gaps are. We find out what language we're all speaking, and we make sure we're consistent, because it's those really little things that'll come up and grab you. But no, I've been really fortunate for the most part. I haven't had it bail out of an airplane or anything, so that's good. But yeah, we've had a couple little engine issues here and there, and You just got to be a little cagey around these old airplanes. You got to respect them, and you got to be really conscientious around them. And I think if you do that and you listen to them, they
Yeah.
talk to you. That's what Lee Louderback always
Yeah.
says, and they talk to you. If you see a little leak somewhere, it's talking to you. So just pay attention.
That's what, if you see an F-16 that doesn't have oil and all the stuff underneath it, something's wrong.
Yeah.
But it's like it's talking to you already.
Yeah.
And that's the thing too is, so Heritage Flight, that's that 4 days, right, where you can dial everyone in, knock off the rust from the winter of no one flying together, but really just rehacking what it is, because the commonality in speaking the same language, while you think it would be assumed, is not always the case. And even guys who've been in the program for 20 years or did demo for 2 or 3 years, there's always something that's kind of like a refresh or something that can happen. And that's like one of those things that I think can get overlooked a good bit. And that's why having those practices are so essential, because the dissimilarity between the aircraft, like for example, like the F-16 demo is finishing the last pass at 620 knots, doing 9Gs, going to rejoin with the Mustang, or God forbid an A1 Sky Raider that's doing 120 knots in the sky. It's so vastly different that speaking that same language is so important. Otherwise, bad things can happen. And when all else fails, you just make up your own language, like we
That's
did.
right.
Just push it up. Yeah, just push it up a little bit, pull it back a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I guess I was with Tuna. This was my second season when he had his engine failure in the P-47. Again, like that's just one of those things that I think I told him, like, hey, you're trailing smoke. He's like, yep, I know. Like it was already go time. But again, a lot can go wrong real quick. So having the training is important. So on that note, what do you do? Like how often do you try to get in the Mustang and fly? Do you do any recurrent training or anything like that?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Absolutely. I mean, first of all, try and get in the Mustang anywhere right after annual in January, February timeframe. So try and get a couple reps in with Jimmy. I have the convenience of being relatively close to Jimmy, so we'll try and do a couple of formation acro P-51 flights before we actually push out to fly our Mustangs all the way from the East Coast all the way out to Tucson. So by the time I get out to Tucson, it's 6-7 hours of seat time. And, you're not that that's a, qual, but I've taken off and done 6 or 7 landings. I've done formation aerobatics a couple weeks before. I'm getting into the zone. The other thing is I go down to Stallion 51 every year, and I do an hour with Lee or one of his teammates. And it's not a friendly, Lee's a friend, but he's not my friend when I'm there to work. Right. So we're doing aborted takeoffs. We're doing buffet tracking. We're falling out of loops. We're going through a generator failure, a boost pump failure. We're getting into the real technical Gucci stuff on the Mustang. Like an example, like when are you going to know you have a hydraulic failure in a Mustang? Well, you're probably not going to be staring at the hydraulic pressure gauge the whole time you're flying it. That's just not a practical kind of, and the gauge in the airplane is in different places. But you're probably going to get into the overhead to do the overhead brake in the P-51, and you're going to go grab the flap handle to go flaps 20 to start to slow that thing down. And the flap handle is just going to like fall. Like as soon as you touch it, there's no pressure from the hydro and it's just going to fall. Well, now you're thinking immediately, okay, now I'm on the gauge. What am I doing? So at that point, you're thinking, all right, do I have a long runway? Because I now need to do a no flap landing. I know my gear should free fall pretty readily. And now I'm thinking I need, way more than 5,000 feet. That would be absolute min, and you'd probably still go off the end.
No kidding.
But you'd want to look for 7,000 feet. So immediately I'm thinking I need concrete. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I usually do that with Lee, and then you do Heritage. And then after Heritage conference is over in February, now you're getting into season, right? So every week you have to go out to the airport, treat it like a demo, open up the aerobatic box at Warrenton, go get an hour in and get silly. I mean, you're really doing a disservice to flying with the ACC demo teams. Cause I don't know, Rain, what were you doing? You doing like 4 or 5 practices a week in season?
Yeah. It depends, right? Like when the team's traveling. Again, my sole job as a demo pilot was doing that. The piece that I think, people either know or they probably figured out, right? You obviously have another job that pays the bills, right? And you're paying for your Mustang. So, it's an additional duty. to go out there and do that and be away from your family, be away from your business, doing all those things every single weekend. But yeah, I'd say, on average.
Yeah, Rain, it's really
it was,
hard to like get up at 5 a.m. away from your screaming kids and go fly a P-51 by yourself for an hour. It's really torture.
Yeah.
During the
but you gotta pay the bills when you get home though.
Yeah, that's a whole nother. I don't even want to talk about that right now. Yeah, it's like depressing. Yeah, I might as well have bought like Pete's Dragon. I mean, these things don't run on like hopes and dreams. Like the saying is with a Mustang, they're really easy to fix. You just throw your checkbook at them. So
I cannot even imagine. It's like that was a nice piece about flying an F-16. When the motor coughed and threw molten metal out the back, you just kind of, oh dang, that stinks. Can I get into the spare? Like it's a different problem sets. It's just different problem sets.
Yeah, it is, but I'll tell you, it's worth it. And in a lot of ways, I think the doors that aviation opens and the relationships, like look at us, we've been, I've gotten to meet new friends and learn stuff. And candidly, like that's like the best part. It used to be when I got onto it was all about the airplane. It was like, I just want to focus on the plane and how cool the F-16 is. And then after 3 or 4 years, you realize it's really about the high quality of the people that you get to be around. And no offense to like the whole air show community, I think it's great, but and I think there's amazing people in it. But for me, the real gas is being around the maintenance officer and the avionics guy and you, and like being around that ecosystem for a 72-hour period. I mean, that's just like really a lot of fun. So.
Yeah, I think what's unique too, because I said heritage is by far the most fun aspect of being a demo pilot and flying. The best part of my job though was, at least for the Viper, and I think the A-10 does it this way. Well, all the teams, they have a set maintenance team, right? But the Viper and the A-10 have their own jets. So we were our own little family, but like working with those guys day in and day out. And while I'll say, like there was one time that I had trashed all 3 motors of all 3 jets, and they were pulling them on the weekend. And while I could go out there and they like let me turn a wrench and like pat me on the back saying like, good job. Like my job was like to buy pizza. End of the day, that was a unique experience, and by far the best, just being around the guys and being around the team, making things happen that you don't get, like, you just don't get that exposure or experience. And I think you're right. It's like this aviation community opens up a network to people if you embrace it, and having that network and, getting to meet new people from different backgrounds and different walks of life is pretty cool and unique.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things everyone's like, well, why do you go to Oshkosh every year? Is it just to fly heritage? And I'm like, no way. I mean, the ecosystem of Oshkosh is it's the most democratization of aviation in the world. You can have the F-35 pilot next to a guy who just built his own carbon cup, next to a volunteer who works for EAA, or volunteers every year. And everyone is an equal, because they're all part of the ecosystem of aviation at Oshkosh for that entire week. And you'll be sitting at a picnic table that's 90 feet long, and you're having a hot dog or ice cream, and you're like, hey, what do you do? It's like, oh, we just flew a Stearman up from, like, you have a Stearman? And you're like, oh, what do you do? He's like, oh, I fly with the Mustang. But there's just all this mutual respect. And I think that's what makes aviation, especially Oshkosh that time of year, kind of like my favorite cool thing, airplane thing to do.
When did you start going to Oshkosh?
Yeah, I went in 2007 was the first time that I went. That's actually where I met Max Moga, General Moga now, the Commandant of Cadets at the Academy today. So I got to meet Max there, who was the first demo pilot for the F-22. And that was the first year I went, and then took a couple years off and started going back in 2000. I would say like 2013 and 14, I started going pretty much every year that I've been. Taking a couple years off here and there.
I remember him bringing the Raptor online, the demo, and now they're getting ready to start retiring F-35s. I think it's 23 next year in the NDA. You might.
Oh yeah, the 22. Yeah.
Yeah. And, which, I mean, those things haven't been upgraded since I think 2011. So it'd be pretty pricey to upgrade those ones that are coming out of the schoolhouse. But it's wild to me that now those F-22s are they rolled off the line in the early 2000s. They're going to the boneyard, and the Mighty Hog is you just can't get rid of it. It's the booger you can't flick.
No, it's unbelievable. I mean, I just think of what's going on in Ukraine right now, and like all the A-10 pilots just drooling on that road. They're like, oh, just give me an hour.
That's. I saw Satan send out. He sent out a text, and it was just a string. I mean, it was like it was their dream. To go out there and just waylay. But that MiG-29 that got shot down over Kyiv got shot down from Belarus, which I didn't know that until I talked to Paco about it, but it's like 150 nautical mile SAM shot, which the whole A-10 is just not gonna hang out too long.
No,
I don't think.
No, that's legit. That's a long stick right there.
Yeah, that's gonna hurt. It's gonna leave a mark. You're gonna get the Martin Baker tie or whoever makes their ejection seat. Not what you want. Not where you want to be in life.
No,
but,
it certainly isn't. That's for sure.
What is the best part of Heritage Flight for you? Because it's a pretty busy schedule for you, but are you still enjoying going out there and doing the shows?
I am.
Frequent?
I kind of like, I bitch a little bit, in the, until I get my plane back and getting out there, and it's just, family, work, obligations. Right. You're always kind of running around paying bills, right, for the plane.
Yeah.
But I would say it's absolutely in that practice day, or, in the briefing and getting ready to go, and the anticipation of wanting to do it right. So yeah, I would say I'm really still enjoying it. I think it's certainly been more rewarding. And I always just, if the weather's good and the plane's running good, it's just it's a great way to spend a weekend. I mean, there's no way around it. It's just, it's incredible. So absolutely enjoying it, heading into season 6 now. I guess this will be my 6th year on the program. But that's it. I would say the favorite part, candidly, is doing it right. Being really safe, of course, that's always number one, but getting the reaction from people on the ground who have either never seen it, or someone who really appreciates it. Maybe they were a wrench turner in the Air Force, or you get to go over and visit with them after the performance or before. That's definitely my favorite part of it right now. That and taking my boys out there. My 3 boys are like obsessed now with.
Are they eating it? They eating it up?
What's that?
They eat it up, I assume.
Yeah, this was it's Stewart, the last show of the season last year. I took them to Stewart, Florida, and they just man, they did a first class job down there. It's a beach show. It's Florida. It's late in the season. They really did it right down there, and I got to take my 3 boys down there, and that was cool. They had a bounce house there too, so that was a close kind of, might be a little competition.
Yeah. It's a Mustang or a bounce house. These are the things. That's the funny part. I do, again, through our time, I really enjoyed us being together flying. We had some really great times, but I do have some really good, many fond memories. But I need to share these photos too, because you were incredibly gracious to my son, Jack, which you came down to Shaw. I don't know if it was like for Loco to Cert, or I think we were just kind of knocking the rust off. I know you were bringing the Mustang up from Florida, but stopped at Shaw, or you had to stay at the airport right next door, which is like 3 miles away because Shaw doesn't have avgas. But we just did several Heritage Flight iterations. That's what we were doing. We were practicing the new routine.
That's right.
So we pitched it. We were practicing it before we went out and did it at Heritage. But it was cool because I got some cool photos of Jack sitting on the stairs of the FBO. One, you put him up in the cockpit of the Mustang, which he loved. But then 2, it's a cool one of you taxiing out, and he's just giving you a big thumbs up. But man,
yeah, I got a copy of that.
I assume,
yeah, that was awesome. I remember that. Yeah, he was wearing a red F-22 demo shirt. I remember that. Yeah, you got a good memory.
Yeah, Manny from the Raptor demo team put him in the weapons bay, and he had like a 5-minute tour of the Raptor weapons bay, which I was like, kid, you're probably the youngest and only kid to ever get a tour of the F-22, weapons bay, this up close and personal. And then, then you put him in the Mustang, and man, yeah, it's some really cool memories.
Yeah.
And it's cool to expose the kids to this. Hopefully it sticks, but by the time they're all old enough, it'll all be robots and
exactly
drones.
Yeah.
Around.
We got to you never, well, and that's the cool part, right? You never know. That's why you need to be on in that environment. I mean, that's our job as part of Heritage, right? Is to inspire the next generation. And, the little girl or the little boy that runs around and says, hey, this is really cool. And they get to meet you, the F-16 demo pilot, or they get to see someone that's like them, like Rebel, who's the new F-16 pilot now. And they see her and they're like, wow, I can go do that too. And that's the next generation, and that's why we're here. You know, we haven't had an opposition aircraft drop a bomb since the Korean War. You know, we've had air superiority since right around the Korean War. 1954, I think, was the last year, if that's
Right.
right. And we need to keep it that way. And the only way we're going to keep it that way is having the best equipment and the best people. Period. And I know General Kelly, my boss, I guess. You know, when I'm on this side of the bosses, you know,
Yeah.
he's way up the food chain. But you know, we've got to do it right and make sure we got the right people in place.
That's the thing. It is a thread that we're talking through a couple different episodes. Billy Flynn, he's going to be on here shortly as well. But General Kelly kind of touched on the interoperability piece. Significantly, we actually recorded that one pre-Ukraine. He was quite candid about leading up to it, which was interesting. But that's one of the things, you know, we kind of joked about like the A-10s going in and just having a field day with the Russian armor and tanks that were lined up. But the next fight, a near peer fight, is a much different fight than when people are used to this uncontested air that we've operated in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria for the most part, right? There's been Russians, and Assad does have some stuff, but yeah, inspiring the next generation to go out there and want to do this, because that is a problem, getting people who want to do it. Although I'll say, I think you and I literally signed the back of iPhones at our first Sun and Fun, which I was like, you know, we're devaluing this, but they didn't care. But I'm sure those people, they want to be pilots now.
That's right.
But yeah, inspiring that next generation, I think is really important, getting the exposure out there, which is what you're doing with the Heritage Flight and the demo teams every weekend from March until November, it's pretty incredible that the Air Force, one, lets this happen. And then two, there are people who are willing to come together like you to dedicate, allocate your time and resources to make it so awesome.
Yeah. I mean, that's the best part. I mean, this program is incredibly special, but it speaks to the professionalism of not only the ACC and having the confidence, but also the civilian members like me that get to be a small part of it, right? So we have a duty of care, right, to maintain the standards. So everyone's like, well, why do you practice? Why are you doing this? I'm like, well, I have to. You know, I mean, you know, it's not fair to just show up and be like, well, I haven't touched the Mustang in 3 weeks, and now I'm going to go fly next to an F-16 and F-22 at 200 feet over a couple 100,000 people. Like, no, I don't think that's going to work. So right. You really have a responsibility, and you either do it right or you don't do it at all, right? And I think that's a key part of it, for sure.
So I'm trying to do math. I'll do math in public, but are there now 11 Heritage pilots?
So no, there's just 10 of us. So Doc Winters and Steve Hinton Jr., fastest man alive in a single engine piston. Yeah. It's making me look good, right? He got, you know, I'm a member of a club I'd never get into now. You know, it's great for me. I'm like, yeah, we want Steve-O. Yeah, that sounds great. Bring in Boy Wonder over here, Mr.
Right.
Flies with Hollywood and everything, just like his dad, of course, you know.
Right.
You know, I'm joking. No, they're two of the greatest guys on the planet. But yeah, Doc Winters, you know, was pretty. I think he would say it if he was here next to me, but he owns Happy Jack's Go Buggy, just an absolutely beautiful P-51. And Steve Hinton Jr., who a lot of people know, has won Reno, I don't know, 5 or 6 times, and I think is the fastest man alive in a single engine piston. That's a guy you need to interview. Yeah,
no doubt. And this was so Steve, you know, Senior. We talked about the Super Bowl flyover. I had him on, and Nike to kind of talk like the aspects of doing the flyover, but not Steve's background, because I had jokes like Steve's forgotten more about aviation than I'll ever know about aviation. I mean, that guy from the beginning has just been doing it. He's got some sporty stories, and then doing the flyover of the Super Bowl with him, that was probably the most stressful flyover I've ever done. Yours would probably be second. For the Super Bowl one, I had so many people like watching. I was like, if we don't hit this TOT, like I'm just going to turn west out into the sunset and punch. Like, I'm not going home. This is not worth it. You know, I'm just going to get ridiculed to the end of time, because doing those flyovers with dissimilar formations, which we kind of hit on, that is by far the toughest flyover or the toughest thing to do in Heritage Flight, hands down. At least for me, I'm simple-minded.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've done so many at Arlington National Cemetery, and somehow it's just always lucked out for me. All the ones I've led, I've always just been really close or right on. Not always perfect, but pretty damn close, and they are stressful for sure.
The one we did at Oshkosh, for, I think it was like a country music. I forget who the musician was. Big name, I think.
Oh yeah, it
but
was
he's
Dirk
doing the
Bentley.
concert. Yeah. So, we rejoined over the lake. You know, it's really busy. They stopped. We nailed the timing, and then my safety-o, who was, we had me, you, Stuart Milson, and then another F-16, and I won't mention his name.
No, didn't I give him the nickname Snuggles for some activity he performed the next day under the wing of my Mustang? So
yeah. He had a great time. You know, it was a great TDY for him, which, reap the benefits. He worked hard, so there we go. But it was the flyover, which I was like, hey man, you're gonna be near Mustang, just be careful. They don't have ejection seats. The standard spiel I give every, safety observer that's ever going to be near a Mustang. He's on my wing, right? Me, you, and Stuart are in the perfect formation, and then he is like lying abreast at a mile because he's so afraid of you on the other side of my wing there.
Yeah.
That like as we do this flyover that just nailed the time, it looked like he was like the Blue Angel like photo shoot.
Yeah.
That's just way far in trail, but yeah, he did appreciate the shade that your Mustang provided the next day for sure.
Yeah. He was special people. We'll just leave it at that.
I think
I think they say in the South,
too,
I think the term they use is bless his heart.
Bless his heart. Yeah. Yeah. He's doing great things these days though. So that's,
That's good.
He was a young wingman at the time.
Yeah.
Now he's just out there killing it. There was some memories that were made.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, it's interesting for sure.
Oh man. Well, Andrew, as we kind of wrap up here, I always like to ask people, if you bumped into like 15, 16-year-old Andrew on the street, is there any advice you'd give him, tell him to do something different?
I would tell you, candidly, I'd tell the younger Andrew, don't sweat the small stuff. There's a really good Texas saying that a good friend of mine gave to me. He's not from Texas. He's here from Arkansas, but he said, hey, McKenna, don't overcook it. Like sometimes in life you can overcook things. I don't need to drink it as hot as you're serving it. That's a kind of another way of saying it. And I wish I had followed more of that advice younger in my days. But, it's hard to look back and have a whole lot of regrets because then you don't learn if you don't make mistakes. So I say that's the other kind of big thing is don't be afraid to make mistakes. Just, in this day and age, you want to make sure you don't make a fatal mistake, right? Either in an airplane or, a careless comment or anything like that. So, be conscientious around that stuff. But no, just push it up. You only get to go around this dial once, as I mentioned earlier. And don't take no for an answer.
Yeah. Andrew, I really appreciate it, man. It was good catching up. Thanks for taking the time, and I look forward to the next time we can go flying together. That's what we need to do.
Yeah, that is what we need to do. We need to get you into the into Pamela Marie, into the T-6. We've been talking about that. We need to stop talking. Let's go do.
Make it happen. Good. Hope you have a safe flight. Go tear it up.
Yeah, we're going to tear it up. We'll save a little for you. Don't worry, for your listeners. Hey, I really appreciate what you do with the Afterburn podcast. It's great to be on. I hope it didn't bore your clientele and your listeners too much. I'm looking forward to listening to it as well, so I can hear how bad I am on radio.
I always say this, I appreciate you taking the time. People are going to love it. But the worst part of this is I have to go listen to it and edit it, and I hate listening to my voice. So if you want to really just grind the gears, is start a podcast and then edit yourself when you hate your voice. So
sound good. I think that's going to be me that hears it for the first time. It's like, what am I doing? This is so bad. Yeah. So.
No, I enjoyed it. Thanks, awesome. Andrew. Man, I really appreciate it.
Hey, Rain, you're the best, man. Thanks so much for having me on.
Appreciate
cool
it.
Stuff. All right. Later.